have just a super, super simple way that I decide what to turn ads on and off for. The number one thing you do have to know though, if you yourself don't go to Etsy and buy t-shirts and wear them every day, then guess what? Your opinion is probably bad.
Trying to be as much of a emotionless, data-driven, logical robot as possible. That's how to succeed at PD. Welcome to Print on Demand Wisdom, episode number 26. Today you're going to watch my conversation with Cassiy Johnson. She's a very successful 7-figure Etsy seller. She really knows her stuff. She's laser focused on Etsy Print on Demand, and she's got some very successful students as well, including Andreas, who you might remember from one of my recent Print on Demand Wisdom episodes. In this conversation, we went in depth into many different areas to do with Etsy Print on Demand, including how to do niche and product research, how to create best-selling designs, how to create the mock-ups for your listings, how to run Etsy ads. But we also talk about some more fringe topics that don't get mentioned too often, like how to avoid getting your Etsy store banned and how to do your bookkeeping, and all of this with a focus on what Cassiy would do if she were to start again from scratch in 2025. How did you get into print on demand, and when did you get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got started almost 5 years ago now. I can't believe it is officially 2025. So happy New Year to everybody. I lost my job during the pandemic. And so I went to YouTube and was looking for ways to make money online. I looked for a ton of different options. I almost did drop shipping, and that just seemed really complicated and complex. And then one night at like midnight, I saw a YouTube video from the life hacker couple on print on demand and was like, okay, I think this is it. This sounds super easy. I could just get started tomorrow. And that's just what I did. I opened my Etsy shop the very next day and just have not stopped since. And it's been a really, really fun journey for the last almost 5 years selling on Etsy. I've started a couple different stores. Like I have a print on demand store and a digital download mockup store. So, it's kind of evolved over time, but it's been a really, really cool process.
Great time to start as well, right? 2020 during the pandemic, more demand. I guess more people getting into it as well. But that was definitely a year where, let's say, it was easier to get sales, which I think is also what we'll focus on in this interview of like, what will you do today starting again? Because a lot of the advice that you heard back then that doesn't necessarily transfer today, I'm guessing. How long did it take you, do you remember, to see some traction when you got started?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually got a sale from someone I knew basically day one, which was super, super nice. And because of that, it boosted one of my products that I sold to someone else. And I sold one to a stranger my first day opening an Etsy shop, which isn't usually the way that it works, but it was a quarantine themed product, which were really trending at the time. But I will say that not everybody just like had an easy time. I feel like sometimes 2020 gets looked at through like rose colored glasses, but I feel like just as many people joined print on demand and Etsy and then didn't make any sales, didn't do what they needed to do, and ended up leaving as today, at least it feels like to me. But then unfortunately with my Etsy shop, it did get shut down for about a month. It is pretty normal for brand new Etsy shops to get suspended for one reason or another. And almost always, like 99% of the time, you do get it back. But because it was the pandemic, they did take about a month to get it actually back open for me. And so in that time, I actually tried Shopify, which was really hard. I sold some stuff to people I knew, and that was about it. But my first month back on Etsy, so get my shop back and a month selling on Etsy, I sold about 40 items, which I was absolutely thrilled with.
That's good. That's definitely better than my first month. And from there, just kept on growing throughout the year, I'm guessing. How long do you think it took for you to get to the stage where you were like, right, this is actually way out for me. I might not have to go back to a job. Like, how long did it take for you to reach that level?
Yeah, absolutely. So it took about 5 or 6 months, I'd say, is really what it was. But, I was lucky enough to be off work at the time. So I did have the opportunity to really work on my print on demand business full time for my first 4 months before I went back to work. And the month I went back to work in August, because I was off work from about, I think it was middle of March to August 1st was when I was off work. And when I went back to work in August, my first month at my new job, I actually made $4,000 profit with my print on demand Etsy store for the first time while I was working full time, making probably about the exact same amount of money working a full time job. So that's when I was like, wait a second, this is really cool. And so I started working on my business even more. And then I was able to quit that full time job by the following June. So it was about a year and a half from like the date I started to when I was like, okay, yes, this can fully support me. I don't need to keep my full-time job. But that was, again, working 20, 30 hours a week on it probably.
Definitely used the pandemic pretty well. Everyone else used it. Everyone else watching Netflix, and you built a passive income stream fairly quickly. So the focus of this interview is going to be what you would do today, right? If you were to start in 2025 from scratch, we'll kind of go through the different areas of print on demand or Etsy print on demand. Let's start off with designs, because that's usually one of the first points, right? From your experience, what sort of designs sell best for you, or what would you do today in that aspect?
Yeah, great question. So I think to answer that question, you have to kind of think about what product you're designing for too. So just to kind of get that out of the way at the same time, I'd say if you're designing for a product that is a best-selling product that sells really well, which I'd recommend if you're getting started with at least Etsy and Printify is the route that I went, that you sell a product that's on the Printify best sellers list. You go in their catalog, there's a bestsellers section, and I think there's usually about 15 items in there. And if you choose one of those products, it's good because those items are bestsellers for a reason. It means there's thousands of other sellers successfully making money selling those products right now as well. And so as a beginner, I think that's the perfect place to start, because the product that you're designing for can really, change what you're designing and why. Over the years, I've sold lots of different products like tumblers and ornaments, shirts, sweatshirts, tote bags, mugs. I've tried basically, half the products that are out there probably.
If we were to focus on t-shirts, what are the exact products there that you would suggest, or do you not sell t-shirts?
Yeah, no, apparel is actually my number one recommended item to sell. And if I was going to start a shop over again, that would definitely be what I would focus on, because there's the most demand for it. I feel like some people get scared away with there being a lot of competition, but there's so much competition because there's so many people buying those products. And so I think the Comfort Colors 1717 shirt with Swift POD is 100% one of the products I would focus on. The other one I would focus on is the Gildan 18,000 sweatshirt. I think the Gildan 18,000 sweatshirt is probably my all-time best-selling item in general. Some people think people don't buy sweatshirts all year round, but I can definitely tell you, as someone who lives in a colder climate, that I wear sweatshirts all year round. Even in the summer, at night, I need a sweatshirt. So people buy sweatshirts for every single occasion, but not everybody posts designs for sweatshirts. So sometimes that can be a really great opportunity.
That's important to note for the international viewers as well, because me being from Europe, I'm thinking as soon as it's like 15 degrees, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but as soon as it's like not cold anymore, people just run out in t-shirts, and no one wears sweatshirts or hoodies anymore. But it's a very different culture in America, isn't it, where I don't think it's just you in the northern states, but in general, people, they'll go out in a hoodie even if it's summertime or it's a bit warmer outside. And yeah, seems like sweaters are quite popular as well then. Do you also use Swift POD for the Gildan?
Yeah, I used Monster Digital for quite a long time as well. But I think when you start selling Comfort Colors shirts, because Monster Digital doesn't have as many options for those, it makes sense to just have one print provider for all of your items if possible. That way, if someone buys a sweatshirt and a t-shirt, they're going from the same person. And so for that reason, I'd probably recommend just going with Swift POD. I've sold thousands of items through both, and I've had really good experiences. So I wouldn't say I have like a super strong preference, one or the other.
Okay. So far the lessons are pick some of the best sellers on Printify, but also make sure they're from the same production firm, ideally, because that helps with shipping, right? Are there any other products that have done really well for you that you would also start out with, or would you just say focus on one or two to begin with?
I'd say in general, if I was starting a store over in 2025 and I wanted to be really successful, I would pick one product with the caveat of apparel being one product. So shirts and sweatshirts count as one product in my brain because it's basically the same designing. I would pick one product and go all in on it because I know me as when I first started, I tried selling shirts and sweatshirts, shoes, shower curtains. I tried a million products my first year. I feel like it really slowed me down. It was around the fall when I made that first $4,000 profit in a month was when I kind of went all in and really focused on posting designs on just t-shirts and sweatshirts for the fall specifically. So it's like the more specific I got, it seemed like the more sales I got. So I do think it takes a little while to go back to your question on designing. It takes a little while to learn what types of designs sell well on each type of product. And I feel like if you spread yourself too thin trying to learn this platform and this platform or this product and this product, then it might take you longer to really learn what works and really research what works and implement that. So for researching designs, it's really important on Etsy specifically because it is a platform, right? It's a search engine. People are coming there, they're searching for a specific item. It's not Facebook. They're not scrolling it, looking just for fun. They're searching for a specific item. They're looking through those search results and then they're buying one. And so it's really important to be in the right niche that's selling right now on Etsy and have a design that is in style and trending that people are looking to buy. You can't just like make up whatever design style you want. It really does come down to a lot of product research and market research to make sure you're making designs that actually will sell.
Okay, so the key there being, if you want to design, don't just do it blindly, do research first, right? So how would you go about doing that research to figure out what to sell or what to design?
Yeah, great question. So when it comes to selling a product, let's say you take my advice and you start 2025 off with selling Comfort Color shirts and Gildan 18,000 sweatshirts. The first thing that I think you need to do is find what's selling. And so the best way to find what's selling on Etsy is just by looking at Etsy. So, the way that I find what's selling right this very second is I go onto Etsy and I search for best sellers. Now, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can just search for, say, like women's shirts, sweatshirts, like search a couple like general terms to really see what comes up if you have no idea what sells well on Etsy. And then you can actually sort the search results by best sellers, which is kind of, they took away the actual way to do it, but there's still a workaround. So you can go to the filters on the top and filter it by star seller. And then in the URL, you can change the word star. So like the actual words of the website, change the word star to best, and it'll actually filter the whole search results by only items that have a bestseller badge, which is a really good way to see what's selling super well on Etsy right now, because that's how you get a bestseller badge. Or one other way I really like to research is search for those search terms and then actually go up to the top right and you can sort the search results by most recent. And that shows you either what was just listed or what just sold. Because that's where I'll find a lot of items that maybe aren't a bestseller yet, but they're brand new and sold today. And that can give you a really good idea of what are people searching for on Etsy that new sellers or brand new listings are getting traction with. And so I'll sit there and go through like 20 pages of the most recent search results and just looking through and clicking on ones that look good to see what's selling really well. So you can also use research tools like Everbee, I love, for Etsy. They're a Chrome extension that you can plug in, and then you can use their search functions to kind of make it a little bit quicker. And that can be a really great way to kind of make the process faster. But I think in the beginning, it is just kind of a manual process. It might feel slow, might feel clunky, but I think it is important to start paying attention to when you're looking at what's selling. What types of colors are they using for their main image? Like what I find for the two items that I'm talking about, most of the bestsellers, not all, but most this year have been either in a sand color or a green color. Those have been like the top front runners is like a moss color, or a military green or like a sand have been by far what I've seen the most of when I'm doing that type of research. It's like paying attention to what colors people are using for their main image, paying attention to what fonts people are using, what graphics people are using. And the more you can kind of like not look at what it says and pretend like you don't read English, but see what types of designs they're making, the more you'll learn about what sells and how you can kind of add value and make something for those items as well.
Yeah, it's a really good point you say that, because on Amazon it's totally different. Well, I'm speaking from Amazon merch anyway. It's always black shirts that you see ranking at the top, and that seems to have been their norm for ages, unless it's a specific niche like breast cancer awareness where you'll see more pink. But on Etsy it's totally different. I do agree there's been a lot of green, not exactly this kind of green, a little bit like your sweater as well, maybe a little bit darker. That's been really popular last year, and that beige as well, which you don't really see on merch that much. Is there anything else you look at besides the bestseller badge? Do you sometimes also click into listings, look at favorites? Do you try and figure out if it's like an old listing through the reviews or stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. So when I'm sorting by most recent, I'm not necessarily looking for something with a bestseller badge at that point. The biggest thing I look for these days with an update that Etsy made is it'll tell you above the price on the top right how many times it sold in the last 24 hours, if it sold more than once in the last 24 hours, which it doesn't always. You have to kind of hunt for those, but those are like the golden nugget listings that I'm really looking for, is when I can find a listing that says it sold 16 times in the last 24 hours. Or I was just looking at a listing yesterday that's just a sweatshirt with a bow on it for Valentine's Day, and it said it sold 49 times in the last 24 hours.
That's crazy. Yeah, I think I've seen screenshots in my server as well on Discord, people finding listings. I have like hundreds of sales in the last 24 hours. I'm thinking, wow. If you had to start again, would you focus on a specific type of niche, like seasonal versus evergreen? Do you have an opinion there? Or would you go after short-term, like political trends, stuff like that as well? Or is there certain stuff that you would just ignore from the get-go?
Yeah, great question. So I think when you're brand new, it might feel intimidating to figure out what niches that you can sell for. And so I think, again, doing your market research is really important. So I'll give you the two answers. My answer for what I would do if I was starting over is I would do about 50% evergreen designs, so the types of designs that could sell anytime throughout the year. And what those end up being are just going to be based on research of what's selling. So something that could sell anytime throughout the year might be professions, so like teachers, nurses. It might be hobbies, pickleball, volleyball, basketball mom, that type of stuff. And then the other 50% of the time that I design, I would do seasonal, because I do think that having a balance of seasonal items that help you get a really nice peak of a bunch of sales all at once, but then also having evergreen designs that just get you a consistent income every month can really help you get to that consistent income faster. Like my first year, I focused almost exclusively for like 3 months on just Christmas, which paid off. I ended up selling like $70,000 on Etsy in 1 month. I made $20,000 profit. That was my first year. And
your
so
first December, that was
my first November. Yeah.
First November. Wow. That's
and
awesome.
That was so exciting. But then I made $1,000 in January because I had only focused on Christmas. I hadn't prepared for like what comes up next or any other like evergreen stuff. And so now I really like to have a better balance. So that way I'm not making $20,000 1 month and $1,000 the next. Like you're not going to be able to quit your job, if that's your goal anyways, with doing that. And so what I would do is have a mixture of both of those. And if you're wondering what niches you should sell, if I was starting all over for product research, if you're wanting to sell a new product you've never sold before, I think it's really important to understand what sells for that niche. So what I would do is go find 20 stores that sell the product I want to sell on Etsy that have been successful in the last like 1 to 3 years. I would make a list of all those stores. And then I would really go through and analyze those stores. Like, just take a week. Like, I know it feels like you should get started and just list today, which I agree with. But I think sometimes taking a step back and just doing a little bit of research can really set you up for success. Because if you research how these stores price their items, how they do their mock-ups, what types of niches they're in is, obviously what we're talking about right now, and be like, oh, wow, all 20 of these stores sell in the Christian niche. I guess maybe I want to get into that one. Or maybe 10 of these 20 stores that have sold 20,000 items in their first 2 years sell in this other niche, and that's where I would choose what niches that I want to sell in, because I think as a new seller, it almost feels like when there's competition that's a bad thing, but it's actually a good thing. I like to run towards the competition. People that are brand new, they're like, oh, I don't want to list a mama shirt, a shirt that just says mama on it, because it's just been there, done before. But there's new bestsellers in the mama shirt niche every day of the entire year, brand new sellers. And there's no better niche than like the big ones to get you like thousands of sales.
So to play devil's advocate, it is harder to get ranked in those niches, but you still want to target them because they have higher potential than the smaller, lower competition ones, right?
Yeah, personally, I've found great success with targeting bigger niches. My very first bestseller was a shirt that just said teacher with a rainbow above it. And so I think the key to getting bestsellers in these really big niches is to know what the design trends are. Because if you made a t-shirt that has said teacher with a rainbow above it today, you wouldn't get a bestseller because that's not what's trending. But if you really take your time and really make an effort to say, look at Etsy 10 minutes every day, look at the best sellers for your product, you'll start to see like, oh, all of a sudden, in the last week or two, I've been seeing a lot of listings using bows become bestsellers. Like, maybe I should start using bows in my listings. Or, oh, all of a sudden I've been seeing like people using cheetah print or checkerboard patterns in different ways. Like, I'm going to try and implement that into my listings. So I'm constantly looking for like the next trending design. And then I find a way to add that into niches that don't have that yet. So a big example for 2024 that actually blew up Etsy was the social club design. And so it's like a fake social club is basically the idea. So to, have some kind of funny saying social club. And they really started in the bachelorette niche. And then by the end of the year, they were in every niche imaginable. I sold tons of bachelorette stuff with that type of design for different specific locations. So it's like finding those trending design styles and adding them to the bigger niches or any niche before other people do is absolutely the recipe that I've used for success that I will be using again in 2025.
And in order to identify them, you have to regularly check what's newly listed, what's starting to sell, to get kind of a feel of patterns, right? Repeating patterns. That definitely makes sense. Another one that comes to mind is that in my era phrase, which I personally wouldn't do because it's related to Taylor Swift, but that's one that just appeared out of nowhere and it sells in like basically every niche. So there's always, even though these niches are competitive, there's always kind of new cultural things or new trends that come up that kind of give a new angle that you can approach the niches with. Once you've found a new way to approach a niche, how do you actually go about creating the designs?
So I'm a pretty simple designer. I'm by no means a professional designer. I don't use like Photoshop or anything. I use Canva. That's the design software that I make all my designs in. And I'd say the majority of mine are basic text and a lot of times even just all one color. It's not like I'm doing a bunch of different graphics or a bunch of different colors. Like, sometimes the more simple the design, the better that it sells. Now, there are exceptions to doing things that are a little bit more complex that I use Photopea, which is like a free Photoshop for. So let's say I was trying to make the curved college font type designs. Those are really popular. So it's kind of, it looks like Harvard, it's a collegiate font that's curved across the chest. Those are super popular. And what's nice about those design styles is they are very timeless. Those have been popular the entire time I've been selling on Etsy. I had a bestseller with a design style like that 5 years ago, and I've had a bestseller recently with a design like that. So like those ones withstand the test of time because they are more simple, but trends change. And so, 5 years ago, you might make a collegiate font where it's just a curved college font that I would make that in Photopea to curve the font the right way. And I have a tutorial on my channel. I don't know if you have one, in one of my videos. And I use Photopea for that. So like, let's say I want to make a college font. You could make it with just black text. But this year, what's been really popular is clipping a pattern to that type of font. So it'd be like a college font with like a floral in it, or, hearts, or some kind of
leopard, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Some kind of like
Yeah.
pattern to it. So that's one thing. Or one thing that's been really trending for the last couple of years is putting, like, if it's a 4-letter word or something, putting like a lightning bolt in between the sides of the word, or putting a bow underneath it. So it's, again, like kind of incorporating those other trends. So if, checkerboard is trending, maybe make it with a checkerboard text. If bows are trending, which they are, maybe put a big bow underneath it, whereas normally before you just do the collegiate style. So what I typically like to do is build design templates. So, I'll look at the trends that are really popular right now in Etsy, and I'll make my first design with it. So again, I'll be like, okay, it's going to look like this. It's going to have the collegiate font. It's going to have this texture in it or this pattern in it. And I'll play around with it. And then I will reuse that design to make it for all the other niches. So I'll be like, okay, I made this design once. I'm going to make it for a nurse. I'm going to make it for a teacher. I'm going to make it for a mom. I'm going to make it for, a social worker, or I'm going to make it for, really anything. And I'll just reuse the same design styles over and over again.
Did you know you can automate that with Photopea as well?
Yeah, I think you can automate it with Photopea, but sometimes you'll have to kind of reconfigure.
Yeah, it's not a perfect science, but you could, if you've already got a template, you could technically swap out a word for teacher, mama, papa. Like, you could do that with a spreadsheet. I've made a video about that. I don't know if you have, but that's quite fun for people who want to try it. One more thing I wanted to ask about is with Canva, because I don't use it myself. But I've heard there was like a phase where people were making negative videos about it, about like not being able to use the graphics or something, or the templates. What do people have to watch out for there?
Yeah, great question. So Canva has a couple rules, and they've kind of fixed things over the years. So one thing you can't do is just get a graphic by itself and upload it to an item for sale. That's a no-no, which is a no-no on Etsy anyways, because it is kind of like a handmade platform. You do have to have a hand in the design process. And so you have to use Canva's elements to create something unique. So text and a graphic, and then you'll be within the rules. Or you can use, 3 graphics, 5 graphics, and then you're within the rules of what you're allowed to do with the licenses for Canva. I wouldn't use any of their pre-made design templates for t-shirt designs, because 1, a bunch of people have probably already done that. 2, they're not based on the research of what's selling on Etsy right this very second, and 3, like, they're usually just not very good anyways.
So you basically, most of the time you said it's simply text-based stuff, and you might add a graphic to it, but you never just use it as it is with Canva. That makes sense. I think with Kittle, you could technically just use it as is, but again, like, other people have probably already done that, so it makes no sense, really. One thing we haven't talked about yet is mockups, and coincidentally, you've just launched a mockup tool. So why don't you talk to me about Simply Listed?
Yeah, absolutely. So mockups in general, when you're looking at what mockups should I use for 2025 and what am I going to be using? If I'm selling apparel, I'm using folded mockups. Those are like the biggest thing on Etsy right now. So it's a folded shirt or a folded sweatshirt with a cute little necklace. There's a ton that are just blowing up and selling super well. That's one of the things I would definitely look into. But if you're not selling shirts, then it'd be the same process of what I was just talking about, where you go look at a bunch of bestsellers and see what kind of main photos they're using. So I don't want you to just guess what mockups to use. It is really important on Etsy. It's different than Amazon, right? They're all just these ugly, flat, shirts
horrible.
laying on a table. But that's all your competition too. Whereas Etsy's a little different. It's like a vibe. There's an aesthetic. People want to be like, oh, that's what I'd look like on my Instagram if I wore that. You want to have kind of a different vibe with Etsy. So it is important to buy really nice mock-ups. And what I'll say is I would 100% rather you buy 5 of the best, most expensive, prettiest mock-ups that you've ever seen than a couple hundred, so you have one of every color you might ever want to sell. Like, I want you to buy the best mock-ups, and that's it. Like, again, spend like a day, really research the best sellers, and you can even buy the exact same mock-ups that they're using right on Etsy. Because I think one of the biggest mistakes I see new sellers making is they procrastinate work a lot. And they're like, oh, well, this design would look better on these colors, so I'm going to go spend an hour looking for different mock-ups. Or it's a pickleball design, so I'm going to go spend an hour trying to buy pickleball mock-ups. And you do all these things that make you feel busy, make you feel like you're working towards your goal, but they don't actually like help you make money. They are just kind of taking up your time and making you feel like you're being productive. So for mock-ups, I really recommend picking one set of mock-ups and reusing them for all your designs, all of them. Same mock-ups, every listing. Get more consistent, get a process. That way when you go to actually make your mock-ups, it's these mock-ups, make them done. These mock-ups, make them done. These mock-ups, make them done. So that way you can get listings from when you design it to posted in a couple minutes instead of, who knows how long. And so that's where my software Simply Listed that I made comes into play. So I made a mock-up automation software that I'm super excited about. And I'll give Philip a 14-day free trial for you guys. Normally it's only 7. So if you click his link down below, you'll get a 14-day free trial and 50 free mock-ups. And what's really cool about it is if you use Printify, which is what it works with right now, it'll grab the design from Printify, put it on all your mock-ups for you, lower the opacity, put the hair or the necklace over it if you need that, and you set that up in your template, and then it'll publish those to Etsy for you. And so instead of it taking, 2, 3, 5 minutes to make the mock-ups for each listing, you could make 1,000 mock-ups.
That's awesome, because that's one of the things I was going to ask you. With Printify, the default mock-ups are not usually what you're looking for, are they? And then changing everything over from listing to listing, it can be very tedious with Etsy. So it sounds like that's going to make it a lot easier. How does it actually work? You said there's 50 mockups included, so you already, if you sign up to the trial, you get actual mockups that do well on Etsy included in that, or?
No, great question. So you don't get any mockups included. You do have to buy your own mockups and upload them to our software. What I meant is you get to create listing photos. You get to create mockups for 50 listings on Etsy during your free trial. But you do have to bring all your own mockups, and you can make mockups for any product on Printify. And in a couple of weeks, we are releasing a custom version. So if you have Shopify or you use Printful, Gelato, if you use someone else, if you do digital downloads, pretty soon you will be able to make mockups for anything. But right now it is just Printify products. And then, you bring your own mockups. And I even started a new YouTube channel for Simply Listed that has some tutorials for how to make mockups for really specific items.
So I'm just curious how this step-by-step process looks then. So you get a mockup, you upload it to Simply Listed, and then what happens after that? Yeah,
I'll give you a quick rundown. So what you do is you build a template. So you're going to build a template. You're going to tell me what product is this for. So for Printify, you're going to tell me, okay, this is a Comfort Colors 1717 shirt. And then you're going to add your 5, 7, 10 photos of your mock-ups. So your size charts, all those things, you're going to add it to our software. And then you are going to tell me where the print area is. So we pull the print area from Printify. So usually it's like, 4,700 by 5,400 or something. And you'll tell me where that square goes on your photo. So one time you're going to have to go size it and put the big box on the shirts, lower the opacity, put it behind the hair, put it behind the necklace, like all the things you normally have to do for Canva mockups. And you build that template one time, telling me where you want your designs to go. And then you save that template. And after that, you can click the template and say, I want to make mockups for these 50 Printify products or these 2 Printify products, whatever you're doing. And we will pull the design from Printify and put it in the same spot within that print area. So if you shrunk down your design and put it in the corner to be a pocket design, we're going to shrink down your design and put it in the corner of your shirt where you told us the print area is. And then you'll just see those pop up into an approval queue where you can look through all the photos. And we even turn them into listing videos for you. So we turn the pictures into a slideshow video, or you can attach your own video. So you can attach like a size guide video, a lot of people like. So that way we'll post your images to Etsy, and we'll also post your video. And then even recently, we will tag the colors and connect them to the color on Etsy. So that way if someone says, okay, I want a size large in red, it'll show them the red image. And it'll do that all automatically for you.
That's amazing. At first I thought it creates the mockups, you have to download them and go onto the listings perhaps. But not just does it upload it to the listings, but it also matches the colors. That's amazing. That's really, really good. Because that's the sort of thing that I would just skip to save time is linking up the colors, right? That's really cool. And yeah, the mock-up videos too, that's handy because obviously it plays, automatically plays, doesn't it, when you're in search results. So that's really helpful. Yeah, so I guess it sounds like it's just, you need a little bit of upfront work to create that template, but from then on, it's not really much hassle. You can do it for multiple designs at the same time, and you'll have the entire listing mock-up set created at once, not just one mock-up for each listing, right?
Exactly. So it'd be all, 5 to 10 mock-ups for each listing. You would make all of them, and then you can just bulk hit publish all to Etsy, and it'll upload all of your images to Etsy for you. So seriously, like if you're doing a bunch of listings, because the reason why I built it is for the people who are like me, right? Like there's been times where I've made 50 listings in a day, every day for weeks. And when you add up how long it took me to make the mock-ups, I could have been making 75 listings in a day if I wanted, Yeah. Not that you have to do that, but if you can spend more time on the things that actually make you money, which is the research and the designing, and less time on the boring listing part, then you can make so much more money on Etsy.
I love that. And I like that it connects to Printify as well, because that's one of the areas where my designs, which I talk a lot about a lot, is lacking, is that it doesn't connect with Printify. You can do the mock-ups, but then it only works if you're selling through my designs in a sense. And it also sounds like with your tool, you could easily create like a new template and test like a new set of mock-ups if your current ones are not performing, right? You just swap out your entire store with a new template.
You could, if you're on the unlimited plan, if you wanted to go remake all your mockups for your whole store, you definitely could, but you'd need to be on the unlimited plan because the other one, you can only do 100 listings a month. And so if you wanted to redo a ton, you absolutely could if you wanted to change yours. And you even can download the mockups if you want. If you're not selling on Etsy right now, Etsy's the only one we can actually publish to. So if you're selling on, say, like Shopify or Amazon or something, you can download them instead of publishing them. But we are working on a Amazon integration right now, and then we're going to be working on Shopify next. So eventually we'll be able to publish to those platforms as well.
Nice. That's definitely handy for people with Shopify stores as well. If you want to test mockups in your Facebook ads, you can create them with Simply Listed. What's the entry level plan then in terms of pricing at the moment?
Yeah, the entry level plan is $15 a month. And again, you can create mockups for up to 100 listings a month with that plan, which I find is what most people do. Most people list less than 100 new items in their store a month. And so if that's you, I think that one's perfect. If you want unlimited though, then that one is $30 a month.
Okay. And that's 100 listings with your five mockups. It's not 100 mockups.
Exactly. 100 listings with up to 10 photos each, because that's what Etsy allows.
Awesome. That sounds really cool. Definitely something that's been long overdue, I think, for Printify and Printful, both of them. It's like they have their base mockups, but especially for some of the apparel stuff, in my opinion, it's not really been very useful. Let's shift gears a little bit. What about Etsy ads? Do you think they're like a must-have on Etsy, a must-use?
No, I don't think they're a must-use. I know I've always used a little bit of Etsy ads, but it's never been my main strategy to make all of my sales. I think they are helpful in getting more data and getting sales on listings a little bit faster than maybe you would organically. So I do think they are a helpful thing to test out. But as a brand new seller, I think I see them hurt new sellers more than help new sellers from what I've found. Just because if you don't babysit your Etsy ads and double check them every day or two, then I've seen them lose people a lot of money. So what I personally would recommend is if you're brand new on Etsy, if you're not getting the sales that you want just yet, I would really do like a tunnel vision time and be like, okay, I'm going to post items that are selling today on Etsy every day for the next month. That's all I'm going to focus on. I'm not going to look at Etsy ads. Like I'm just going to find a niche that's selling on Etsy today. It's sold 10 times in the last 24 hours, those types of niches. And I'm going to post for them every day for a month. And when you start getting sales on those items, then I think it's worth looking into Etsy ads. But until you can start getting the organic sales and know that your pricing must be right, your photos must be right, you're doing your niche research right, you're doing your designing right, once you learn those skills, which might take you a couple of months, honestly, especially if you're not able to do this full time. If you're just doing this in your spare time, it might take you a little while. And I think once you're confident, like, okay, I know what I'm doing now. I can make trending design styles. I can make designs for things that are selling right now. I've got great mockups. My pricing's competitive, but makes me profit. Then I think it's time to kind of check out Etsy ads and start playing around with them a little bit. I'd say maybe $5 a day, $10 a day, just to start getting some data on which listings sell well on ads, because some listings will just lose you money no matter what you do. They're not all going to be profitable, but you will find some. I've had some listings that I've had on ads for 2 years and they just stay a bestseller and they sell well for 2 years straight and then eventually die. It's like something else better trending comes along. Nothing lives forever on Etsy. But yeah, I would say Etsy ads aren't like a mandatory, but they can really help, if that makes sense.
So let's say hypothetically you're new to this, you don't really have a lot of budget, you're trying organic at first, you're posting listings that are trending, and you're starting getting a few sales, and you're debating to turn on ads. Would you just turn them on like the few items that have sold, or would you try your entire catalog?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think the best way to start learning Etsy ads would be to only turn them on listings that are selling if you're going to have a small budget. Because let's say you have 200 listings. If you're running $5 a day ads on 200 listings, it's not really going to promote all of those with that budget. It's not going to get you enough data for you to really, actually be promoting that many listings. And so if you're going to promote all of your listings, to try and just see what sells, then I might do a little bit of a bigger budget and just test it for a couple days, but don't let it run rampant. If you have 200 listings that all spend 75 cents, that adds up and can really eat into your profit.
And it doesn't give you any data, because if you have one click a listing, it's like, what have you learned, right? So yeah, that makes sense. So focus more on a smaller amount initially, if you're on a low budget. Smaller amount of designs, that is. And like moving forward with that, what do you look at in terms of the metrics? Like when do you turn an ad off, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So one important thing to know about Etsy ads is when you're looking at how much money you spent versus how much revenue that you got back, the revenue number doesn't include your shipping costs. Which with print on demand on Etsy, a lot of times we're baking in some of our profit into the shipping costs. Like maybe it only costs me $4.75 to ship a shirt, but I'm charging $5.99 for it or something. This is just a random example. But so sometimes some of the profit is in the shipping as well and like kind of goes into the calculation. And so I don't look at the ROAS as much, which is just like a number that you'll see in there. It's your return on ad spend is what that is. I just don't think it's always like 100% clear picture. So I have just a super, super simple way that I decide what to turn ads on and off for. The number one thing you do have to know though is how much profit you make on that item every time you sell it. after Etsy fees. So, I sell an income and expense report for Etsy that has a calculator with the fees built in. I think Everbee has one built in. You can probably Google one, but make sure you're putting in, okay, this is how much my customer is going to pay. This is how much it costs me. And after Etsy fees, what do I make profit? So like, let's take an ornament, for example. Maybe I make $5 profit after fees every time I sell an ornament. And so when I'm looking at the ads, if I see an ornament has been clicked on, 6 times and it's spent me, $10, but it's sold twice, then I know, okay, I've about broke even on that. But if it's spent $15 and sold once, then I just lost $10. So I like to turn ads off after the listing starts losing money. I like to give it as much profit as it would have sold one time to see if it'll sell. And if it doesn't sell within how much profit that is, so a sweatshirt, maybe you make $10 profit. I'll spend $10 on that listing to see if it'll sell. But if it goes past what it would have made for one sale, then I cut it out.
Okay, that makes sense. So the profit is like your testing budget. And if it's losing money on the ads, then you're going to just cut it. If it's breaking even, would you just leave it running for a while? Because it does help and potentially bring in organic sales as well, right? That's kind of the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's breaking even or even like kind of close, I'll leave it on if it's selling. If it's breaking even with one sale, then, I'll let it run for a little while. But if it is going for a little while, I might eventually turn it off if I'm never making money on it and it's not selling, But if it is selling, then yeah, getting sales on your listing from ads, even if the ads aren't making you money, the organic side of the listings can make you money, which is interesting that you bring that up because my friend Hannah Gardner, I don't know if you've ever connected with her before, she has a new software called Profit Tree. And she just recently built in a new feature that actually helps you measure how much you spent on ads, and then how much total profit you've made on that item with and without ads. So that way you can see, is this listing profitable in general, which is just a number that we haven't really been able to see. So I'm excited to kind of check that out and try it myself.
Nice. So it's counting organic and ad sales in the overall number, so you can actually get a better feel for whether the ads are worth it. They might look like in the ads console they're not profitable, but really if you add organic on top, they are. That's
right,
the idea.
yeah.
Right?
If it's losing you like $20 or something, like it might not always end up being worth it, even if it's selling really well organically. But yeah, I think it is good to look kind of holistically at it. But I think you just have to kind of set your own standards of, okay, if I lose this much money, I'm turning it off. Because if you play around with that too much, I've seen people be negative for the month and not actually make any profit. And I don't want print on demand to actually accidentally turn into an expensive hobby. It's supposed to be a side hustle. Like I want you guys making a profit.
Speaking of, you've seen people, you do have a paid community where you help people with this more closely, right? What have you learned just from helping people over the years?
So I've had my course available for, I think, almost 2 years now. I think in April, it'll be 2 years. And it comes with a private community where I do live calls and I do trend reports. So if you want to know what trends I think are trending, what designs I think you should be making, and niches that are selling well right now, then that's a really good thing. And what I've really found is that a lot of people have trouble being consistent and kind of getting over that initial dip to get to where you're getting sales. I see a lot of people that will start with Etsy, they'll make like 40 or 50 listings, and then they'll be like, okay, it's not working, I quit. But if you can get over that initial dip, and there's a book by Seth Godin, I think it's literally called The Dip, that I think was such a good read. We read it in our book club one year, and it was such a good one because it's true in almost anything you do. Right when you get started, you're so excited, there's so much to learn, you're getting all these endorphins, and then you fall into this dip when you're like, oh, okay, there's a lot more work that goes into it than I thought. And then eventually you start to put the research into action and your actions catch up to you and you start getting the sales and you come back up. But if you can get past that initial dip, I think you'll be so much more successful than you even think in your wildest dreams. I wish that overnight all of you could be six-figure sellers and quit your jobs, but it takes time. I've had 2 or 3 different students make almost no money their first year because it took them a little while to figure it out, and then their second and third years, now they're sold $1 million. If you look at Simply Shauna's YouTube channel, or Andreas, he had a slower start. He's got a YouTube channel for print on demand, and now he's sold over $1 million. So I guess my best advice that I've learned is, number one is just get started. You're not gonna be able to learn it all before you get started. You have to kind of learn as you go. It's the only way. There's too much. And then 2 is to just stick it out through that dip. Get to your 100 listings, 150, 200 listings, while putting in the work, obviously not just quantity, and you'll eventually get there.
Yeah, I love talking about this kind of stuff. And that's why I asked you as well how long it took you initially. I kind of like asking that question because, yeah, for most people in my community or that I've interviewed, it's always the same. For me, it took at least a year to get to a decent level of sales with Amazon as well. Same goes for Etsy. And same with my YouTube channel as well. How was that experience for you with the YouTube? Was that quite slow initially and then eventually took off, or?
I'm trying to remember what it was like on YouTube at first. There wasn't very many YouTubers when I got started a couple of years ago. There was, the OGs like Ryan Hogue and Juna from Detour Shirts, but there wasn't a ton of people making Etsy content. So it was basically me and my friend Heather from Heather Studios YouTube channel. She's got great videos as well. We started within 4 or 5 weeks of each other and became besties. And that took off pretty quick for me, but I think it was because I was making YouTube videos that had never been posted before. There was no how to do personalized listings with Printify on Etsy. That video didn't exist before I posted it. So it was me really taking a lot of the hard lessons I had to learn myself and helping people learn how to do these really in-depth step-by-step tutorials. I think really helped a lot. So, growing on YouTube, I had no idea I was going to love being a teacher, but it has been such a wonderful experience, and I've had so much fun doing it.
So basically, you're defining all the rules, you're breaking the rules. You had pretty fast success with POD and with YouTube, but no, that's cool. So it's definitely something that I hear from my community as well. Is that initial phase of getting started is the hardest, because you go into it really optimistic, you see there is potential, and then you start learning more about it and try it for yourself, and then it's now you know more stuff, but you don't get the results. So it's yeah, you have to push through it. Is there anything else in your community that are common pain points or beginner mistakes that always reoccur that you could help some people stay away from?
Yeah, honestly, I think the only thing that really comes to mind immediately is the most common thing that I see hold up new sellers is overthinking their pricing. And that might sound silly, but it's I'll just constantly see it. People are like, oh, I think my pricing might not be good. I'm trying to redo my pricing. How do you bulk edit all of your pricing? And it's just something that I see people kind of working on a lot. And
I love that term, by the way. I wrote it down. I was just thinking the same thing. A lot of these procrastinating tasks, I think, are holding people back at the beginning, focusing on tiny details that don't really make much of a difference.
Yeah.
So what do you tell people in terms of pricing?
Yeah, so, obviously I can't give super specific advice depending on what you sell, but I'd say just good rule of thumb, you should be making 25 to 30% profit margins after Etsy fees. But that's before paying for Everbee, paying for Simply Listed, Printify Premium, Etsy ads, right? So that way, when you pay for all that stuff, you still have profit left over. I see too many people thinking that they need to compete with the cheapest listings they see on Etsy, and you don't have to. The really beautiful thing about Etsy is that people aren't coming there because they're looking to buy the cheapest item. They would go to Walmart for that, or Target, or the dollar store, right? You can buy t-shirts at Five Below these days. They're coming to Etsy because they want to buy something really nice for themselves that's really unique, or a really nice gift for someone. I was doing an example on my live call yesterday, actually, showing that, if you sell an item for the same price as some of these other sellers, you'll lose money because they print it at home. But if you really add value and you make a really great design, you combine 2 trends that no one else has before. If your designs are really good, then I showed another sweatshirt that is $50 and you'd make $13 profit every time you sold it, and it had sold like 5 times in the last 24 hours. So people are willing to pay for what they want. If you just get better at making better designs based on research, and you focus on literally only those 2 things, do better research, make better designs, do better research, make better designs, you'll make so much more money than making just a bunch of mediocre designs that are priced really low, right? That's not how you make profit. So price competitive, you don't need to be the top end of it, but don't price too low. That's a huge, huge mistake I see new sellers making. And then they do their income and expense report for the month, see they actually lost money selling print on demand, and then they quit because they're like, oh, this is not working. So please don't let that be you. Please make a profit. Focus on the things that actually move the needle and make you money, and that will be so much more worth your time than reorganizing all your listings in your Etsy store, redoing all your mockups for the 70th time. Like, don't go back. And I guess that's my last thing I'll say on that is, one other mistake I see people make is they learn something new and think they have to go apply it to every listing they've ever made. Whereas that's going to be 100 times. You're going to learn something new and be like, ooh, I don't really like how I used to do this now. So try and make those changes going forward, not backwards, because usually it's not worth it to go edit 300 listings that never sold in hopes of maybe having them sell. Like, put that time into researching what's selling right now and making a trending design for it, because that is what makes you money.
Unless you can do it very quickly with something like your tool, right? If it only takes a few minutes, that's fine.
Really
But
quick. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then it's okay. But if not, then, skip it.
If it's procrastinating working, if you're going to take a day or 2 just to edit some listings, it's probably not going to be worth it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing that we didn't touch on, but you mentioned it earlier, just briefly, is personalization. So how does that come into play?
Yeah, absolutely. So personalization, I'd say, is a really great way to make money on Etsy. If you can find a niche that's selling really well right now, but no one has made a personalized version, so add a personalized name to it, or even just the year, like 2025, where they can customize what year it says. That is a way to get people to want to buy yours instead of someone else's. It's huge on Etsy. I think people really know that Etsy's where you go if you want to buy a personalized present for someone. They've really done a great job marketing themselves that way. And so I think personalization is a great, great option, especially if you're willing to do a little bit more complex. So like going back to those social club design styles I was talking about, where if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, this might be a little bit of a visual, but if you go to Etsy and type in social club, I bet you a bunch of them will come up. It's like the blah, blah social club. If you're willing to customize like the names and the location and the date or something, then people are going to be willing to pay more for it. They know that that's more work, and other people aren't willing to do that. It's not as scalable. So, eventually when you're getting like 50 orders a day, which might not feel realistic right now, but trust me, it's coming for you. If you put the work in, it'll be here before you know it. Then you're going to have a literal like long day doing a bunch of personalized listings. That's what it was like for me last Christmas. I was personalizing like 50 to 100 ornament designs every day. And luckily I had an employee to help me that I hired to help out with it. But this year I had Hello Custom, which if you haven't heard of Hello Custom before, it's a personalization automation. So just like Simply Listed, it takes a second to get it set up. You have to upload your design and tag, like this is a name, this is a date, etc. But then they will actually, when you get an order, change the names, change the date, and all you have to do is click approve, and then it'll upload the design to Printify and fulfill it for you. And that was such a time saver this Q4.
So how long did it take then to do, like, say, 50 orders with Hello Custom?
With Hello Custom, I'd say to do 50 orders, maybe 20 minutes. Because you're really like...
It's like half a minute, yeah.
You got to like take a look at it and make sure it's right. Look at the order or make sure it's right. Or every once in a while you have to make a little change. So I'd say like 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Because you reminded me of Andreas. He was also saying that he's got a lot of personalized stuff selling, and he's sat there all day long during Q4. I don't know if he's looked at Hello Custom yet, but either way, if you can use Hello Custom, definitely look into it if you're going to sell a lot, or if you've started selling a lot. So yeah, that's interesting. It definitely, if there is a niche where it's not available yet, try it out. It's like an easy way to start seeing some sales quickly. And it's almost strange, isn't it? Like the customer has to do more work. They have to type in some stuff and give you instructions, which you'd think would make it less likely they buy. But actually, yeah, if it's more of a custom gift for the person they're giving it to, I think it's always kind of more valuable. And you're right, you can command a higher price, because I've sold ornaments for prices I never thought they'd sell for, like an ornament, a little plastic thing, and you can easily get $20-30 for it if it's customized. So yeah, cool. So one thing that's obviously kind of a big scare factor on Etsy for some people is that your shop can kind of just be gone overnight, or like you said at the beginning, your shop was closed quite early on, right? That's a very common thing that happens. So do you have some tips for people on how to avoid losing your shop?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there is a lot of fear of people losing their shops, but I was really scared of it for a long time. And besides them temporarily closing my shop when I first got opened, I've never had a shop get closed. So I will say that it's probably going to be fine. Like, they don't usually just close stores for no reason. Like, you're safe. Now, if you're going to make Etsy your full-time job, maybe have some other type of income just in case, because it's always good to have your eggs in more than one basket. Like, also sell on Amazon after you get Etsy figured out. So that way you have your designs, same designs on Amazon. Because I think I've made like $10,000 on merch by Amazon by just uploading like 500 of my Etsy designs that have sold well. Like, if I uploaded all of my designs, I probably would make a bunch more, but there's only so much time in the day, But ways to avoid getting your Etsy shop closed. One of the big ones is your personal information. So if you get married, or you move, or you get a new bank account, or you get a new credit card, like, you need to make sure that when the information, your personal information, gets updated, that you change that on Etsy. You can't forget to change those things, because that is a big thing that flags them for like a scam if your information doesn't match up. And so making sure that information's correct, which also goes into, don't pretend you live somewhere you don't, because that is one of the number one ways to lose your Etsy shop forever, is to lie and say you live in the US, is the mistake a lot of people make. If you don't live in the US, that's okay. You can still only sell to the US. You can even say you ship from the US if you're using a US print provider, but you don't have to say in your real tax personal information that you live in the US. It's okay if you say where you live. So that's a big no-no. The other big no-no is not selling trademark or copyright stuff. I had to learn that the hard way. There was no YouTube videos talking about trademarks or copyrights when I first got started. So I didn't even know those existed when I first got started selling. And I definitely sold some trademark stuff. I got, I think, one trademark infringement from Hamilton, the musical, because I just didn't even know that I was using the Hamilton logo. For one, I was like, oh, this cute thing's trending on Etsy. I didn't even know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So research what you're selling.
Quick tip there, by the way, for anyone, if you see a trend and you're not sure what it's from, like you can't really tell, like if it's not obviously teachers or moms, if it's a symbol or something you don't know, screenshot it, throw it into ChatGPT and ask it. Like, that's a really quick way. I found that sometimes more effective than Google. Yeah, go ahead.
ChatGPT has been so great. But yeah, avoiding copyright and trademark. Now, I have sold quite a bit of parody merchandise. Like, in my first November, I had one listing that really took off because an influencer on Instagram, well, it had taken off before that, but an influencer on Instagram had actually purchased my item and posted on her Instagram story. She might even have had a Netflix show, actually. I don't know if she was just an influencer,
Really?
but
That was just by chance.
yeah, just by chance. She didn't talk to me. She didn't say she was going to do it. And I got like 700 orders in a day. And it was on a Schitt's Creek item, which I didn't say Schitt's Creek in the title, but it was like loosely based on Schitt's Creek. It was like, if you've seen the show, then it'll make sense. But it said something along the lines of making a list and checking it thrice. Is basically what it said, where in the show he says, like, I've asked you thrice now for a towel, is like what it actually says in the show. So it's like, I just used the word thrice, and it's like, if you know type joke. And so I've played around a little bit with parody works, which, if you base something, like a lot of people will do like a play on words, like I like them real thick and sprucey for a Christmas tree, when like the song lyrics, I like them real thick and juicy like doing like a play on words, but you obviously can't use anything trademarked in like the title or the tags because that'll get you in trouble. So not saying you should do that. Just, kind of sharing my experience of like learning it. If I started over from scratch, like would I do that again? I don't know. It's dangerous. You're playing with parody works because they are legal. Parody works are legal, but you have to know what you're doing to not infringe and not lose your shop. And if you don't want to do the research into what that looks like, then just avoiding it altogether is your safest bet, and making sure that you're checking that terms that you're using are trademarked or not trademarked. Like weird words, like if you're using regular words, you're probably safe. Like first grade teacher, super safe, But if you're using like a made up word, like bookish, then I really would make sure you're checking your trademarks on those types of words, because a lot of times they get trademarked, and try and avoid those. One tip is to sign up for the email list of TradeSnark, tradesnark.com. They send out an email every week with new trademarks that have gotten approved in different categories. And so I'll just scan that list every week that they send. I'll go to like the clothing section and see like what new trademarks actually got approved, because sometimes you'll check something's trademark and then it gets trademarked a year later and you don't know.
Yeah, that's the issue, right? It could become trademarked at any point. There is also like the common everyday words that are trademarked sometimes, but those are usually fine to sell. Like there's no issue with that. One caveat to add as well to your parody examples is those are technically legal, right? They're in front of a court of law. You should be fine or allowed to sell something that's like a parody of a show or parody of a song. But we're always dealing with the marketplace. We're not actually dealing with the court. So you always have to be careful there and speak or base your decision on experience of other sellers. Like on Amazon merch, I wouldn't do parody designs because Amazon likes to pull those down quite commonly. I don't think on Etsy it's that strict, because I mean I see so many blatant Disney ripoffs and like actual infringements that seem to be selling.
One thing I'll say, it is different on Etsy because Etsy doesn't, every once in a while they'll like try and do a sweep for things, but the only time Etsy listings get taken down is if the trademark holder reports it. That's typically the only reason. That's not something that Etsy really tries to do. But I will say one other thing, that a lot of times, not a lot of times, but sometimes when you see trademarked stuff on Etsy, people do have licenses for it. So a big example is you can apply as a normal everyday person for print-on-demand licenses for like book series that you like. Like if there's something you want to sell, and you can check their website and see if you can apply for a license to actually sell licensed merchandise. I know a lot of people on Etsy are selling like Fourth Wing or A Court of Thorns and Roses, or like two really popular book series that you can apply to be a licensed merchandise seller. So not Disney probably, because theirs for their license is really expensive. So if it's a really big Etsy store, they could have a Disney license, but I'd say most of the people on Etsy are selling them illegally and either don't know or don't care.
Probably the larger part, yeah. Have you ever looked into that? Like how much does a license like that cost typically? Do you have any idea?
I looked into it one time and now I'm trying to remember what it was. It was something really expensive. I don't know why, something in my brain's telling me it was like 20 grand and then a portion of every sale or something, but it might have been more than that. I just don't remember.
Yeah, that sounds like a...
For Disney anyways. The smaller ones, I don't think you usually have to pay. You just have to get like of the profit.
Okay. I actually never thought about that, but yeah, you can definitely have a license. So some of them may be legit, may be legitimate. And even on Amazon, like on Amazon merch, you'll see shirts that are straight from Disney, but that will be you'll see it in the brand name, right? It's from Disney, from the official store. If it's a random brand name, then it's usually not official. It's not allowed, or someone's ripping Disney off. One question that came up actually in my recent interview with Andreas is someone was asking in the comments what's kind of the best way to do bookkeeping for Etsy. Do you have any tips there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, me personally, what I have done is I built an income and expense report, which I do sell. It's like $20 on my website. And it's basically just, 12 different months pages where you track your expenses. So anytime you spend any money on your Etsy business, so mockups, softwares, everything, you'll just go put it into that document to track it. And that's how I've done my own bookkeeping, to make sure that everything's included. And so I just kind of do it manually myself. And then each month I put all those things into categories. So I have like a softwares category, or like product cost category. I'll put them into bigger categories. And then at the end of the year, I work with an accountant. And then my accountant, year by year, it changes sometimes, will tell me like what I can write off. Like, can I write off my phone bill? Can I write off a part of my mortgage for having home office? Can I write off my new laptop that I bought? So I'll track those kind of expenses and just work with an accountant to make sure that everything is kind of above board. And that's basically all I have to say about bookkeeping, I guess. So nothing too fancy. I know I've heard some people use like TurboTax to track it, but I've never used it, so I couldn't tell you what that would be.
Never heard of it. But yeah, it is a really boring and dry topic, and once you've figured out a system, you kind of just want to forget about it. At least that's me. But yeah, it doesn't get talked about too often, so I'm glad we could answer that. So if that person is watching, check out Cassie's tracking. What was it? A tracking spreadsheet?
Yeah, it's an income and expense report. The other thing I will say about it, though, is as boring as it may sound, do yourself a favor, though. And on the first of every month, or the second or third, whatever, do your income and expense for the month. Like, please do yourself that favor. Because if you have made a mistake, like one year I didn't raise my prices when Printify raised theirs for sweatshirts. And then there was a shipping surcharge for the holiday where shipping's more expensive. And between those two things, I had sold, I think, 2,000 or 3,000 sweatshirts at a few dollars less than I should have. If I would have raised my price, I would have made $6,000 more in profit. If I had raised my price. In profit. Yeah. Because I sold like $100,000 in revenue. And so if I had just sold them for $2 or $3 more, it would have made a huge difference. And I found out immediately that I made that mistake and updated my prices. But I know even my sister one time, she didn't realize that candle prices got upped. She just didn't notice, didn't pay attention to it. And she lost 50 cents every time she sold a candle for like a month. But she caught it immediately because she was doing her income and expense every month. So please do yourself that favor. That way if something's going wrong, and you can really have a better thumb on the pulse of your business and how it's going and how much money you're actually making. Because revenue's cute, revenue's nice. Someone tells me they sold $1 million. Cool, I don't care. How much did you get to keep? That's the number that really matters when it comes down to it.
Yeah, that's really important advice. Definitely stay on top of it, because if you miss something, you could be losing money the entire time. And also, speaking from experience, if you have to do all of your bookkeeping for the year in one go, that is horrible, man. I have to do that my first year, and it's not fun. You spend a week doing that, and it's so boring, and it doesn't bring you any further in your business.
Right.
At that point. Yeah. Is there anything else that you think that we haven't touched on that people need to know that are starting out this year?
Yeah, I guess the other thing I'll tell you is if you're brand new to print on demand, you might not know what to expect. And I think there's two things that are really important to know when you're selling online for the first time. And one is that a good conversion rate, so the amount of people that click your listing and then buy it, a really good conversion rate is 5% of people who click it buy your item. So when I first started, I'm 10 people clicked it and only one bought it. What's wrong with that? That's a 10% conversion rate. You should be looking at that and jumping up and down that it only took 10 clicks to get that one sale. But I think if you don't know what's normal and what it looks like, you're going to be disappointed by your actual success on accident, because your expectations just aren't lining up with what reality is. And reality is you're going to probably start selling at a 2% conversion rate. And then you want to try and build that up to 5% once you've got really good photos, really good designs. Sometimes when I sell ornaments, I'll sell multiple, designs in one listing, and I'll get it up to an 8 or 10% conversion rate with that. But in the beginning, I think it's just really important to know what a good conversion rate is. So I hope that makes sense. Or I don't know if you knew that when you first started selling, but I feel like
No,
that's
no, no. I was going to add to that, even the other level, like views to clicks, right? That also at the beginning is like, oh, 100 people have viewed my listings, but only so many have actually clicked through. Yeah, you need a lot of views to get people to click at your listing as well. And especially at the beginning when you're still learning, the mock-up practices and everything, and you're learning how to design. It takes a lot of views initially to just get click-throughs, not even like thinking about orders. So yeah, that's definitely important to note.
And then the other thing that's important to note is the 80-20 rule is something that I learned and have found to be super true, which if you have never heard of the 80-20 rule before, it's that 80% of the outputs that you put out are not going to make you any money or any results. So it's like 80% of the listings that you make are never going to sell. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It doesn't mean that you suck at it. Like that's just the way that it works. It's going to be 20% of your listings that make you all of the money. And that's okay. So you really need to try to not get like emotionally tied to your listings, because I can promise you something that unless you're a magical unicorn, the designs you love are never going to sell. The designs you make that you're like, that's hideous, are the
Yeah.
ones that are going to be your next bestseller. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah. The ones you'd never expect, exactly. Yeah, they're the worst ones that are going to turn into your bestseller. That's so true.
or just like one word on a shirt and you're like, that took me 1 second to make, why did that sell 80 times? Like, because simple sells. Like, you're not making stuff that you like, you're making stuff that other people like, and that's the whole point. Like, if you yourself don't go to Etsy and buy t-shirts and wear them every day, then guess what, your opinion is probably bad. If you shop at other stores, if you're shopping at Abercrombie and Gap and all these other places and you don't even wear shirts with words on them, guess what? Your opinion is trash. It doesn't matter. You need to make stuff that other people like that actually buy it. And I think that's a really hard lesson to learn in the beginning. So yeah, I think just not getting emotionally tied to any listings, making all your decisions based off research is going to go such a long way. And if you just have those expectations going in, I think you'll be so much happier with growing your business instead of thinking like you're doing something wrong the whole time and focusing on that and having that bum you out.
Trying to be as much of a emotionless, data-driven, logical robot as possible. That's how to succeed at PD, basically.
Yeah. I think in the
No.
beginning it feels that way, but once you fill your brain with all the endless possibilities of ways that you can make designs and the ways that you can add value and the different niches you can design for, eventually it feels really creative and your juices get going. But when you first get started, your mental library is empty. There's nothing in there. You don't know what works. You don't know what sells. You don't know what to do. So in the beginning, you're going to stare at a blank canvas on Canva or wherever you design and feel overwhelmed and like everything's been done before. But slowly over time, once you look on Etsy enough, like 10 minutes a day, looking at bestsellers will make such a big difference. Is just filling your mental library of what's even out there, what the options are. And eventually when you go to design for something, I promise you're going to feel so inspired and have too many ideas. And I want you to look forward to that and know that that's coming.
And remember the dip as well, because if you post something, it doesn't sell today or doesn't sell in the first week, doesn't mean it's a lost cause. Sometimes things just take a while to take off. At least that's what it's been like for me, especially with evergreen niches. So yeah, the 80-20 rule, it doesn't apply the day after you upload your designs.
Yeah.
You're not going to have 20% of them sell that quickly. So yeah, where can people learn more from you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have my YouTube channel, Cassiy Johnson. That's just my whole YouTube channel name. So nice and easy. If you're interested in like my course or my income and expense report or my niche calendar, you can go to CassiyJohnson.com. And then if you want to automate your mockups, then you can now go to simplylisted.io. But again, you'll only get a 7-day free trial if you go there. If you want to check it out because you are a wonderful guest here on Philip's channel, you'll get a 14-day free trial if you use his link down in the description.
That's awesome. Thanks a lot for that. We'll leave all the links below to your website and your YouTube as well. And yeah, thanks a lot for sharing your story and your tips and your advice. That was a very good in-depth. We broke an hour, a nice in-depth Etsy interview. So I hope for people starting out, it helps you. And yeah, thanks a lot for your time, Cassiy, and hope to see you again in the live streams in the future as well.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Philip. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.